briefly worked with Lauren when she was an intern at Slack. And over that summer, she quickly captured the company's attention with her creativity, storytelling, and ability to get people to pay attention to what matters most. Lauren has also spent time at Microsoft as a PM and designer, and at IDEO, where she studied what Gen Z thinks about Gen AI, which is work that I still think about years later. During Lauren's talk, I really encourage you to consider her perspective of what our jobs are, not just as the researchers doing the research, but as influencers, which I know we heard about a little bit earlier today. And to also just consider the active role that we can all play in directing the attention of those around us. So thank you, Lauren, for being here.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren, and I'm super excited to talk about Moonshot research reporting. And we do this by becoming a crafter. Here's research, the thing that we know and love. And it's in a bit of an interesting place. Research is changing, and that's why we're all here. First, we're living in the attention economy. It's not the first time we've heard this conference. Everyone's attention is limited. At work, this looks like new messages constantly. The PMs and execs are getting DMs left and right. It's piling up. There's always yet another channel and another. And trust me, I work at Slack. I know this. So while Slack or Teams may not look like infinite scrolling TikTok, the greater context that we're operating in remains the same. Attention is the new prerequisite for information consumption. Next, AI. We all know this one. Generating new content and information is the easy part. It's crazy. You can ask Claude to analyze the data and create a report. It'll saute for 4 minutes or whatever that means, deliver a canvas right in Slack. As content generation accelerates, so does noise. Lastly, the ever-shifting organization. Direction and strategy changes often, which adds to the noise and information overwhelm. It can feel really distracting. In the midst of the attention economy, generative AI, and ever-shifting organizations, you end up with a very noisy, unfocused environment. And as researchers, we have to be like, hey guys, there are some important insights. Can you please pay attention? In this moment of research, this means we must cut through the noise. How do we do this? We optimize for memory times impact. Memory is the multiplier for impact. An insight is only as impactful as it is memorable. I got a crash course on this by seeing research from our partners' eyes. I was briefly a PM and quickly realized that even being a research-loving PM wasn't enough. There's more research than I could realistically consume. I definitely had like 10 tabs of decks and only got through 2 to 3 end-to-end with my full attention. The PMs are really having meetings all the time. It's not personal, and I knew this, but I had to live it. I also spent several years designing, toy inventing, and researching Gen Z at IDEO's Play Lab. At the Play Lab, we always talked about how play, even in the most corporate of settings, had a really magical way of unlocking deeper collaboration, risk-taking, and experimentation. This did not undermine the validity of the work. It elevated it, and it will totally surprise you in some of the best ways. Now I lead research for the Slack mobile app. Designing for mobile is so different than desktop. You have the smaller screen size, the unique mobile moments, like the commute or the coffee run. This inspired me to lean into mobile-first formats for my research, too. Of course, my mind goes to vertical short form, which we'll get to very soon. So somewhere along the way, seeing research from all these various angles, I had a realization about being a researcher. Craft is something we hold. It's our research ethos, knowledge, methods, rigor, all of the good stuff we nerd out on and makes us who we are. while crafter is active. It's an active role. It's what we do. It's how we practice, show up, collaborate, create. So these two things, they're not in opposition. It's a yes-and situation. I like to think of it as magic versus magician. Great, you know magic, but have you ever thought about becoming a magician? When we change the language, we can actively step into the role. So here's my pitch. Build on craft, become a crafter. Craft is forever important and non-negotiable, but craft alone won't get us impact. We're here to strategically direct, we curate. Crafter is how you put craft into practice. So now that we can think of ourselves as more than researchers and as crafters, that lets us get more creative and expansive about how we make impact. To do this, warning, we must challenge some long-standing beliefs and ways of working, such as new research reporting formats, what might be the opposite of a deck, internal company culture, which can make experimentation feel really risky at times. How will this be received? How will this change the culture of research? We'll also have to rewrite several parts of our job descriptions. And ironically, sometimes too fun is the scariest question, depending on the work context. So let's say we put all these 4 elements in conversation and challenged each of them. Would this compromise what we believe is most effective about traditional research reports? And what if becoming a crafter is the role that lets us craft, challenge, and reimagine how we maximize memory and impact? We'll take a look at 3 examples today: research reels, wrapped, and data cards. Let's dive in. For research reels, I turned my research deck into a TikTok. I can't play the full video, but I'll break it down in the next slides, nor do I want my face on blast on this huge screen. The reel starts with a hook. Here's everything you need to know, a playful headline or analogy. Among infinite content in Slack, immediately let people know that it's relevant to them and worth their time. You think your stakeholders just fell out of a coconut tree? You and we all exist in the research context. Even in an experimental format, we can't forget best practices. Always ground in the research questions and goals. Even one sentence is sufficient in the TikTok. This way, stakeholders are also oriented to interpret the following findings. For the main content of the video, I reuse deck assets, don't reinvent the wheel, pull in videos of user quotes, graphics, slides, and frameworks from your decks. It keeps the background interesting. It also connects your talking points to the report. And let's be real, we're here for a good time. Sprinkle moments of fun and relatability throughout. Memes can convey feelings that my words alone cannot, like this one. What do you do for a living? I do my best. Publishing the first research reels to Slack was a bit scary. I didn't know if it was allowed, but the impact surprised me. Engagement skyrocketed, evidenced by emoji reactions and organic sharing. The mobile-first format made it flexible to consume research. People watched while commuting on the train. It was handy, easy to refer back to, memorable. It was also really easy to send to the new PM who just joined. Next, researchers don't just share research, they build a culture of research. The reels generated research FOMO. It was like creating a movement everyone wanted to be a part of. One stakeholder shared that the reels gave Team Mobile an identity. It was like a collective rallying around our users. To go all in on the TikTok comparison for a moment, our role is kind of like being an influencer. We want people to look at us and be like, what's your take? What should we do? And was it too fun? Said no one ever. Really, how fun is it to read a 20-page deck? In fact, busy PMs and execs would rather watch this. One director said, hope this becomes a trend for others. How concise and actionable. Turns out, you make it fun, your cross-functional partners will also want to share on your behalf, even to channels you're not aware of. just like sharing a TikTok with your friend. This means the impact spread beyond mobile and to our adjacent feature teams, and that we're able to follow up with live design jams. Okay, for example number 2, we have Research Wrapped inspired by Spotify Wrapped. Here's a story. We launched Hold the Phone, where we hosted almost daily live-streamed customer chats with mobile users. This was catered for engineers so they could build user empathy and product sense, and participation was amazing. After the season wrapped, like any researcher would do, I synthesized the insights into a doc, posted it in Slack, and I got a really sad amount of emojis. My worry was that team members attended one session and called it a day. I needed them to come back and close the loop one more time. So I shifted my content strategy to direct attention. The fun of Spotify Wrapped is seeing your own data reflected back at you. So I made recap graphics to highlight and celebrate participation in the research effort, like 500 plus thread replies and over 25 people joining. Through this, I learned that you really just need the first click. It's like when you go to Trader Joe's, the sample draws you in. Next thing you know, you have the crackers and the cheese in your basket, and you're like, I don't know how it ended up in there. You don't need to completely redo the research report. You just need to rethink how to get people's attention. So upon reposting the same exact doc, but with the new graphics, I'm happy to report that emojis were back up and people were actually in the doc. Sometimes a research report is the best format, and in this instance, it was. The missing link was attention. Internal company culture. This one surprised me. Everyone, even engineers, became my cross-functional allies. Usually, as researchers, engineers are not our main audience, but they actually read the report, proactively flagged relevant insights, and took it back to their teams to tackle. I'm not in all those conversations or rooms, but the impact continues to multiply. Our job is to empower our partners, and it starts with directing their attention. When engineers, in addition to our primary stakeholders, have a shared understanding of what we're building and why, research can shape strategy and facilitate alignment in a grassroots way. And here, fun and is an effective strategic lever to boost socialization. This is on purpose. Now, the artifact carries attention-grabbing weight instead of over-indexing on the single share-out to guarantee impact and eyes. Okay, raise your hand if you played with Pokemon cards. Okay, ideally more, but I was obsessed with them. Data cards is inspired by just that. It's also inspired by cheat sheets that you could bring into a test, of course, if your teacher lets you. So how do we compact the most impactful information that will facilitate decision-making? I compiled info from our data warehouse and recent survey insights into these cards. Shout out Anna for talking about multi-source research. So I couldn't include everything, and that was the point. This is researcher curated. Every stat was meant to map to a specific feature team. Here, the keyword is snackable. Anyone in Slack could download these cards and have them handy. The snackable quality also inspired the designers I work with. They had the amazing idea of turning these cards into Figma components that are available in our design library. They're accessible in the flow of their work to quickly ground in a user's point of view. Pokemon cards are portable to play with friends. Cheat sheets hopefully make your test easier, and we often find ourselves reaching for the prepackaged snack in a pinch. A different form factor allows research to be received and internalized in a new way. As much as we love our reports and decks, it's not always the most convenient to pull up. The snackable insight is the memorable one. My biggest learning, embed in existing flows of work. I noticed PMs creating strategy fig jams. Imagine you're a designer and you're in Figma all day. What did the research say about this? Now I have to go find that deck. Is it in Drive or Slack? What do I even search? Leaving Figma, the friction compounds, how could research meet them where they're at? Reduce the friction needed to consume new insights, then they will be easy to consume. I think we all know this one, but it's just a good reminder. Research your own team and org, get to know them, their needs, and craft accordingly. And it was only once I leaned into a playful format, the research became more approachable and digestible, and ended up unlocking new levels of collaboration with my cross-functional partners. Now let's zoom out a bit. If you think of research reporting as experience design, there are so many opportunities to show up as a crafter. We often leave the little bit at the end for socialization. Sometimes we move on way too fast. But we should be spending more time in socialization. When we savor this phase, you can spend more time as a crafter. The creative storytelling is what enables us to direct attention. It's not the end goal, but rather in service of greater impact. So get crafty with new formats. Let artifacts you create help align the team, direct the attention, and drive the conversation. There are a million ways to get crafty, and inspiration is everywhere, like TikToks, memes, social media, zines, data journalism, anything that's grabbing your attention in real life, pay attention to that. What if I told you that you could get crafty tomorrow? On a more tactical note, I'll share the tools I use, my research reels process, and then some guiding strategies. Here are some of my go-to tools. Feel free to take a photo or revisit the slides later on. I just film with my phone. I have a tiny mic, optional, but highly recommended for the vibes. To create graphics, Google Slides is pretty powerful. Canva and Figma are also great. For editing, iMovie and CapCut are quite feature-rich without being too technically intimidating. Reduct and Descript are amazing for cutting clips and also adding captions. Captions are great for accessibility, but will also instantly up-level the production value. Call in AI where it makes sense, and you bring your thinking, creativity, reports, data, of course, your favorite memes. Now for a quick crafter's guide on how to create a research reel. I suggest taking an executive summary slide that you've made and just try writing a short script based on that. I've also uploaded my research report and asked AI to create a short script based on that. This will force you to distill and curate your insights and will also give you an idea of what the video will look like. Oops. You also want to film, edit, add your captions. When you export your video, remember to name it something comprehensible, not that random list of numbers it'll sometimes give you. That way it is searchable in Slack for the future once you post it. As I'm crafting, here are the strategies and mindsets I'm centering. Number 1, maximize the memory times impact multiplier. Number 2, you need content plus a socialization strategy. That's content strategy. Number 3, our job isn't to merely produce. Your value as a researcher is to curate and direct attention. Lastly, remember your cross-functional partners are co-crafters. You're not alone in this. Our work is relational. And as scary as it can be to send anything work in progress, design and engineering do it all the time. They're sharing prototypes. Consider your research artifacts to also be a prototype. Get your team's feedback. I did this with the data cards. We do research peer reviews all the time, but why don't we do the same with our cross-functional partners? The impact of research is ultimately a team effort. We're all on the same team, and we should show up like it. Lastly, for reals this time, in the spirit of more Moonshot research and reporting, you can craft things, and you should. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. That was awesome. Okay, do we have questions in the audience? I see one over here.
Hi, my name is Barrett. Thank you for these creative ideas. I was wondering, how do you balance the increased need for speed we're seeing in research with this extra effort of designing creative packaging?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, you exist in the research context, so like what is the goal? What is the decision that the stakeholder is ultimately trying to make? But I think the data cards are a good example because that came before the deck did. But that was something that I needed to get to the team. We were doing a lot of iterative work, so I wanted to get that into their hands first. So sometimes I know we have this process of synthesize and have a formal deck, then make the artifacts. But I think we can play around with the steps of that process where it makes sense, because sometimes getting something out faster and the most important information is better than following the exact process. You can always go back and make the deck or your data repository later. So that's what I would suggest. But it is definitely hard, and like lean on AI where it makes sense too.
Let's see right here. Oh, this one in the back first. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi. Hi, Lauren. It was great hearing from you, especially as a former founder and researcher. I have a question. Currently working in a company which is much more traditional and risk-averse, how do we go about pushing and adopting these research and presentation methods? And do you think this risks oversimplifying the nuances of findings that we have in case these are time sensitive or so on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's where the craft versus crafter concept helps, because craft is like our care, our rigor, all the stuff that we're trusted to do. Crafter is this like secondary mindset that we can take on and apply where it makes sense. And so if there's research with a lot of nuance, you actually want people to read the deck, then you might want to take an approach similar to the wrapped example, where I want people to be in the doc, I want you to engage deeply, but I just need you to click in. So the report doesn't change, just the surrounding artifacts to direct the attention does.
All right, I think in front here was next. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tara, and I'm a researcher at Pleo. In the spirit of building in the open, I'm wondering what are some experiments you've tried in creative artifacts that haven't worked so well, and how have you iterated the ones that you have shown us?
Yeah. Okay, here's one that I'm like currently noodling my way through, which is the microsite, which is increasingly easy. Like with AI, you can ask Claude to make a little interactive microsite or like journey map. That one, I can't tell how successful it is yet. I'm still feeling it out, because in the way that you have to have people like leave their work and go dig into a deck, a microsite is something that's very external, and it's nice when something embeds within where you're already working, such as like Slack or Teams. So I don't know if a microsite is like a glorified deck, but it's having some of the same elements of friction. I think the microsite is more valuable for myself, so I made a data card microsite so I could automatically update the cards. If anyone does want to go there and download it from there, they can. But that's more for me, whereas I think the external artifacts, we should aim to create less friction for our stakeholders. So that's one I'm like still figuring it out, still prototyping.
All right, I think we have time for one more. Maybe over here in the front.
Okay.
All right, so really Really cool talk, and I'm there with you. My artist name is Crafty Sorcerers, so yeah, there with you, man. Influencing and sharing detailed insights and make it accessible. And I'd love to hear more about how you break down like really detailed work, which all of our work is very much careful, thoughtful, like very much that trade-off of like content versus timing. Because there's some stuff that we do need to get into deep, in depth for, and also these formats tend to be very quick. So how do you balance out getting in depth with something? Like take a report. Like, do you break that down into 5 videos? Or like, how do you convert the depth of what you've done and also make it within a reasonable time range for someone to click on and listen to? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a great question. So for the Reels, that was exactly what you're thinking. It was like a series because it's like a foundational study. There's a lot of, it was a long deck, which is why I got worried that no one was going to read it. So I think that's another trade-off is like the format can be really long and you want people to understand the nuance, but how much of it are people going to take away and like what are the key pieces of information that they need? So that's where our curation lens comes in. I would suggest, breaking it into a series. That way people can have it in like bite-sized pieces. Still having those share-outs with a small focused group with your PMs and designers, prioritizing, really embedding and jamming together. And then the other artifacts can help socialize the research, maybe like beyond the team and like garner interest. So I think it's like it's a yes and situation, and that's what you kind of have to figure out is like your content strategy. So sometimes I also think of it as like going on a world tour. It's like I did this research, now I'm gonna go to all these different like teams or cities, spread the word, and then if you ever want to refer back to it, here's a really easy artifact to go back to as well.
Awesome. One more round of applause for Lauren. Thank you, Lauren.